Music stopped. We're good to go. All right, welcome guys. Welcome. This is Resolve 2018. So Resolve is entitled Resolve because this time of year in January, what is everybody all about? New Year's resolutions, right? So today, what I want to do is instead of like hoo-ha, rah-rah, and get you guys all excited about your New Year's resolutions, what I prefer to do is focus on the fact that it's a reality that every single one of us has goals. Every single one of us, we're working towards something. It could be big, it could be small, but the simple fact of the matter is we're working towards something in life because one of the fundamental human needs in life is growth. And every single one of us needs to grow, so you're either doing that actively or you're doing that passively, right? And what I prefer for you guys to be doing is to be doing that actively, to actually be consciously thinking about the goals that you are working on, because I don't need to get you fired up about them. If they're true goals that you're working on, hopefully they stem from dreams, and dreams are things that you guys don't need someone else to fire you up for. Dreams are things that come from within that are inspired from God. So today what I want to do is I want to give you guys some resources that are going to help you reach those goals, hopefully faster and more effectively. Fair? Awesome. So Resolve 2018, it's all about not waiting until next year. We don't want to wait until next year for our resolutions to come true. And I'd love to start with this quote. Who's seen this quote before? Our deepest fear is not that we're inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. Who remembers this? Some people think it's MLK, right?
No.
Or not, Nelson Mandela, I think, was famous for saying this, but it's actually Marianne Williamson. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. It's our potential. It's like who we could be if we actually applied ourselves. And that's really where, for a lot of us, for whatever reason, the enemy gets in our head and gets us thinking things that aren't true and confessing things about ourselves that aren't reality. And then we end up shrinking out of fear of what I could be. And we allow the darkness to be the present reality instead of the light. So we ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, and fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small doesn't serve the world, but every single one of us has a purpose and a calling to do something that has some sort of impact, some sort of influence in this world. So I ask you guys today, starting off, what is that for you? Because a lot of us do this. We say, 2012, New Year's resolution, I will get my weight down below 180 pounds, right? And then over the New Year's, we already talked about this at one of our last workshops, one of the things that happens is through Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's Eve, we have like 60 days of, it's totally cool to do whatever I want to do. And then most people end up gaining somewhere between 3 and 4 pounds that they never end up losing the next year. And so every year we just tack on that extra 2-3 pounds. So next year, my resolution, because I didn't have it stick, is 2013, I will watch my calories until I get below 190. And then 2014, I'll follow a new diet religiously until I get below 200, right? And I will try to develop a realistic attitude about my weight. In 2016, I'll work out 5 days a week, and then all of a sudden, my new goal is work out 3 days a week. You guys see where that's going. So we don't want that to happen for us, so how do we get around that? Well, it starts with, what do you really want? So getting clear and concerned on what you actually want to happen as a reality in your life is obviously the first starting point. We're going to talk a lot about like goal setting today. We're going to talk about time management. We're going to talk about stress. What the heck is the deal with stress and how does that affect us? So we're going to go through a lot of really cool details, things that I get really fired up and excited about. The question more accurately is, who do you need to become to have these things happen? So for most of us, our New Year's resolutions don't end up coming true because our resolution isn't founded on a big enough why. You guys think about that? So shout out some of your New Year's resolutions that you've had in the past, or maybe you have one right now. Just play along with me.
Read a book a month.
Read a book a month. Okay. Anybody else? Come on, you guys got to play all out. You got to participate if you want to improve.
Work out twice a week.
Work out twice a week.
Get out and
Get off meds? Okay.
Squat 300 pounds.
Okay, so all great things, right? You want to be able to squat 300 pounds, that's specific, that's great. Read 1 book a week, that's also specific, that's great. Get off of medications, that's great, but it's not super specific, right? So we'll talk about how we can start doing maybe a little bit smarter goals, but before we set the goals, what we really need is a bigger why. And so like why, the question I want you guys to do is there's a drill, it's called 7 whys. So for your goal, for your dream, ask yourself after you put it down, I want to read 1 book a week. Why? Why do I want to read 1 book a week? So what would the answer to that be?
Just to, good question.
You just want to read 1 book a week?
Yeah.
There's no reason why?
Yeah, I'll just read everything in my library, I guess.
So you can read everything in your library,
Yeah.
okay. Now ask yourself a second why. Why do you want to read everything in your library?
So they're not just sitting there.
Okay. So you don't want them to go to waste.
Yeah.
Why do you not want the books to go to waste? Why do you agree?
Because.
And we can keep going, but eventually what's going to happen here is his why is going to go from an external why to an internal. It's going to go from the body and soul to more of a spiritual driven why. So that's really what I want for you guys to do is start applying your goals to this filter of 7 whys to get down to a deeper why. You'll find that you probably want to come off of your medications because you want to be there to walk your son across to stand up in front of the aisle with your son when your son gets married. You know what I mean? Like that's a powerful why that will pull you through for sure, especially when the times get rough. But I want to get off medication because I feel better. That's great, but it isn't going to pull you through. And so for a lot of us, we end up having this really shammy why, and then because the why is, it doesn't really pull us through and give us a good foundation. So I could be totally wrong on what that why is, but it's just an example. So instead of settling for going from one negative to another negative, what would really behoove us is to go from a positive to a positive. And what this really has to do with is we want to build on our strengths, virtues, and character. We want to focus on our strengths, not focus on our weaknesses. So when it comes to New Year's resolutions, a lot of times people, like fall short for people is they'll focus on the things that they suck at, they're not good at. When it would behoove you to really focus on your strengths. What are you gifted in? What are you good at? How can you excel? And then how can you build on that to create success in your life? And you guys are always welcome to give me some amens and do a little amen corner over there. See, we're wired to make an impact. So the question is, what moves you? Commitment, personal responsibility, contribution, honesty, honor, trust, loyalty, boldness, purpose, integrity. What is, the meaning that I'm trying to build in my life? So those are all great things to kind of start with, to really start churning that brainstorming process of who do I have to become so that these goals can come true, so that these dreams can be real. And then the belief is super important. This is really, really cool. There's this thing, it's your truth is not the truth. What the heck does that mean, Dr. Dave? Well, look, it's really, really hard to lose weight. That might be your truth, but it's not the truth. Fair? Mm-hmm. And so for a lot of us, we make our truth, and then all of a sudden, our truth supersedes the truth. So don't get yourself caught in that trap when you're thinking through some of the goals that you're working on, and then all of a sudden you hit that mental roadblock of like, no, that's going to be painful, or no, I can't do this, or no, I can't come off of the type 2 diabetes medication, the metformin, because my parents had diabetes and their parents had diabetes. Well, that's not the truth. That's your truth. So maybe we need to start shifting that belief. And so a lot of this is actually designed in our brain. What I'd love to do is actually give you guys a little bit of neurology of how this whole process takes place. For a lot of us, when we're setting goals, when you set the goal, what's one of the things that you do in your brain? Like you close your eyes and you picture what?
You visualize yourself accomplishing.
You think about what would it feel like to not be on the medication? What would it feel like to read a book a week and have 52 books next year that I churned through all those books and I got all that knowledge? right? And so what we're doing is we're actually picturing what that end product would look like. And so the way that your brain is designed is actually to work off of images and patterns, specifically vision. Before we can go into the neurology of that, let's just talk about how our bodies work real quick. In the room right now, it's kind of quiet, but when the music was playing earlier, the projector screen is up, I'm up here moving around, there's people talking all around you. There's a lot of like distractions, right? The way our body's designed with the brain is the brain actually picks up every single one of those senses. What I hear, what I feel, what I touch, what I smell in the air, the noises. If you guys were at like a crazy wild house party, think about all the way back to your college days, those house parties that you guys went to, there was so much stimulus all around. And then someone across the room could say your name with a really low voice, and all of a sudden it's like, binoculars, and like, your focus is on that person, right? 5 different people could go to the same exact party, and 5 different people's stories of what that party was like would be completely different. Why is that?
Your brain picked up different things.
Yeah, because humans by nature are deleterious creatures, and what that means is we have thousands upon thousands upon thousands of stimulus that come into our brain every single second. Like literally from the shirt that I'm wearing, how it rubs my skin, and then the sensory nerves in my skin that send a nerve impulse to my brain, and how my feet feel in my shoes, to the cars that are driving on the road back there. Like there's a lot of stuff. The thing is, like my conscious brain, I don't see that all. What happens is all of that sensory input comes up the brain and then goes through a filter. So we have a filter in our brains. God gave us a filter. How cool is that? This filter is called your reticular activating system. So you can call it the RAS. So if you guys want to write that down, RAS is super important when it comes to setting goals and making goals a reality. Why? Because what will end up happening, just to give you guys a little background on this, is all the information comes up here, and then our reticular activating system acts as a filter, and it sifts out and deletes everything that's irrelevant. How cool is that? And then once it deletes out everything that's irrelevant, that part of your brainstem talks to all the rest of your brain, the conscious part of your brain, to tell it about it. What? That's cool. Yeah. So this becomes really, really important because this guy right here, your ocular nerve, and what you see has 75% more input than all of your other senses to that part of your brain. Yeah, 75% more input. So this part of your brain, the filter, your RAS, does a lot of really cool things. It screens out all the BS, the junk. You could even say it screens out, when I say BS, bad belief systems, right? Because a lot of other people will say stuff, but if it isn't what I believe, do I even listen? Like half the times we don't even hear what some other people's opinions are. Allow you to focus on what you value, allows you to perceive threat, and some of that's subconscious, so when it's filtering things through, it's why like in a life and death situation, some people all of a sudden can have like that spidey sense and be like, whoa, something's about to happen, and like you can act really quick. It supports you when you set your goals. So what I would really want to focus on though is how does it support us when we set our goals? One of the things we did to advertise for this workshop was we put these vision boards together, and it wasn't just to advertise for the workshop, it was because we needed to do it for ourselves. So our team did it working together, because what we're working off is this principle, your reticular activating system. You guys ever hear of Romans 12:2, the good book, the Bible? Okay, so in Romans 12:2 it says, be not conformed to this world, but in stark contrast, be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that, and this is the purpose, so that you can prove what is good and acceptable and perfect will of God. So what does this verse really, really mean? Because if you believe that our bodies were created by a higher being, that God created us, which I absolutely 100% fully believe, then surely God would have designed our brains so that we can transform, right? By renewing our mind to prove the good and acceptable and perfect will, the dream that God birthed in our heart. So So the cool thing about this, check this out. This part of your brain works off of images and patterns. And so because 75% of your sight is the input to this part of your brain, you would presume to, you could grab a gamble on the fact that visual input is super, super important to that part of your brain. In studying the reticular activating system, what they found is that part of your brain, if you don't consciously program your RAS with new visions, by default, it will be programmed by your environment. Just by default, just like random default, all the input that comes in your environment, because you're not consciously controlling the things you're focusing on for that input that's coming in through. By default, it's just your environment. So it's like the people you hang out with, it's the people or it's the television shows that you continually watch, it's the Facebook stream that you're just consistently going through. So it's all those things are actually programming your RAS. Now let's talk about what the RAS actually does. Your RAS, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, literally every second you're alive, filters all the stimulus to give you what's programmed into it. So for instance, I take my car and I decide I don't like my car right now. I start salivating over a brand new Maserati. And I decide I'm gonna go to the Maserati car dealership and I get in the brand new Maserati, the Gran Turismo. I get in that bad boy and I drive it for a test drive. And while I'm driving it for a test drive, it smells good inside, everything's new and fancy, it goes really fast, the engine revs. What am I doing? I'm sitting there and just like visualizing, man, this is gonna be amazing if I could drive this off the lot and this is my new car. So I start picturing myself in the car. Then I see the ticket price and I'm like, hey, $150,000, I don't think so. So what do? I go home and I drive my regular car home. Now over the next week, all of a sudden, everywhere I look, everybody else has Maseratis. And I'm like, what the heck? Why does everybody else have a Maserati?
It's just like your vehicle, you buy one day, you see it on the street every time.
Yes, that's your reticular activating system. I envision myself in the Maserati and then program that into my RAS. So now, the reality is I saw the Maseratis before, but I never consciously saw them because my RAS filtered them out. But now because I envisioned it and I programmed it in, that's all I see. Because of 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, it's filtering all the stimulus to say, Maserati, Maserati, where's Maserati, 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 right? And so now I see it all the time. This is super powerful when you really start looking at how that part of your brain is designed in relationship to this verse. Because if we don't program that part of our brain consciously, it will conform to this world. And we don't want to conform to this world because we don't want what's of this world, we want more than that, right? So instead, we're encouraged to be transformed like a caterpillar going into a cocoon and birthing out of that cocoon butterfly wings, a complete transformation. And the cool thing about this is we can control what our brain focuses on by programming things into it. This is the power of vision boards. So if you guys don't have a vision board, my encouragement to you is go home tonight, start Google searching all kinds of things that you're looking to have happen in your life. This is an example of a vision board. So this is Peyton's vision board, right? Maybe I probably should explain one that I know everything about. Here we go. Well, I don't know everything about this, but Julie's at least here so she can explain it. So this is a vision board that we have for Julie. So up in the top right, what do we have?
We have, well, twins. We have twins.
Okay. Twins. So twins is something that she wants. So they want kids, and it's something where it would be nice to get it done in a one and done deal, right? So you don't have to have 2 kids. But that's a simple example of something that you can put, and she's being specific about it. Now her kids aren't going to look exactly like that, but it helps to put this on the wall when you wake up in the morning and you start doing your morning routine, where it's the first thing that you look at. So you start programming this into your brain the first thing in the morning, so the rest of the day, the focus and the intent is there, right? So we're not conforming to this world, but we're transforming ourselves by renewing our mind. Now that word renewing in the Greek is the verb, is a continual action that's done over and over and over and over again with no termination. It has no ending. It's like a continual recurring payment, right? But you're paying yourself, you're rewarding yourself. And so it's really, really cool. We get to renew our mind and we get transformed in doing it, and we don't get conformed to this world. So raise your hand if you guys want to start doing a vision board. Yeah. So if I could show you guys how big my vision board is, it's like that freaking big. Like literally, it took me forever to do this year, but I finally got it done, and it's hanging right like next to my bed. So it's the first thing I see when I wake up in the morning, and I'll spend, it doesn't have to be long, 30 seconds, 2 minutes, it depends on the morning, but I will sit there and intentionally look at some of the things to remind myself who I am, who do I need to become, what are the things that I'm looking for, how am I gonna make that happen? Cool? So hopefully that's something good for you guys. Now when it comes to goals, we're gonna shift gears a little bit. Most people with our goals, we get stuck because of this thing called stress, right? You get stressed out of your darn mind because you've got all the work responsibilities you gotta adhere to, you've got deadlines that are coming up, you've got your kids that are nagging at you, you've got the car that just broke down, and so life hits you and things are a reality and stress comes along. Most people's way of dealing with stress is this right here. Put your head, bang it right there if this was on a desk. So place kit on firm surface, follow directions in circle of kit, repeat step 2 is necessary until unconscious. If unconscious, cease stress reduction activity. Right, so that's not a good approach. I want to give you guys a little better approach when it comes to stress. But first we have to understand what exactly the stress is. If we go to the graveyard and we looked at someone's gravestone, we could look at every single person's gravestone and it would say, here lies so-and-so, died of stress, right? Because the reality is every single one of us is exposed to and has to cope and deal with stress. So I want you guys to imagine, you go to the zoo, you're having your family trip at the zoo, and everything's quiet, copacetic, happy, super cool, then all of a sudden you hear shrieking screams, and there's people running all around, right? And then someone darts past you and you're like, what's going on, what's going on? They're like, the tigers are loose, the tigers escaped from the pen. Without thinking about it, automatically that stimulus will trigger an innate response. So your reticular activating system will take that input and immediate priority sounds the alarm and your body goes through a stress response. So without thinking about it, I don't need to digest food to run from the tiger. Boom, the tiger's right there. My body shunts blood to my muscles. I need muscles to run from the tiger, so my blood pressure shoots up, and a lot of chemical things change in my body to survive, so I can live, right? Because I don't want the tiger eating me. Make sense? Mm-hmm. So that's part of what's called the fight or flight response. Your body goes through this response. The problem is we don't have tigers anymore. So most of us, we're not cavemen. We don't sleep in a cave and then wake up and then go hunt a saber-toothed tiger. So because we don't have the crazy experience with the tiger, for a lot of us, we have the crazy experience of life, and we take the tiger and we bring it with us everywhere we go. Does that make sense? So chronic stress, I like to refer to as goallessness. When we don't have something that we're focusing on, by default, we're conformed to this world, right? And when we're conformed to this world, the world wants us to be running around, running for our lives, stressed out of our mind because the tiger's continually chasing us. We don't want that. We want to have goals. We want to have dreams that we're working towards. We want to stay focused. We want God on our side, and we want to conquer the world, right? You're in this world, but you're not of this world. So, chronic stress is not good. It causes a lot of different crazy things. Here's the tiger. We go to work, the tiger's under our desk, right? We're in traffic, we're driving, and someone cuts us off, and then, anger, and there's the tiger. So we carry the tiger around with us everywhere. What I want to do is give you guys some practical tools and life hacks that will help you with this thing called time, right? Because time is an asset or a resource that every single one of us has an equal amount of. We might not have an equal amount of money, but we certainly have an equal amount of time. Everybody has 24 hours in a day. How we use that money, that asset, that time, is completely dependent on us. So, with that being said, your body goes through this whole response. This will be
Have you run away from a saber-toothed tiger recently? Maybe you haven't, but the stress response you feel when you are late to work, or the growl your stomach makes when you haven't had anything but an energy bar and coffee in the morning, is the same stress response we had when we were cavemen. That stress response is called fight or flight. Grump is a real-life caveman. He goes to work hunting saber-tooths and rabbits for his family. Unfortunately, the saber-tooth chases Grump on occasion, and his physical and emotional stress levels go way up. When this happens, Grump's body's intelligence kicks in to help him escape. His heart rate goes way up, his blood pressure spikes, more adrenaline is produced, and the body moves the blood away from the digestive tract and into the muscles, as digesting food isn't a priority at that moment. Grump eventually does escape and rests at home, and after 15 to 20 minutes, his body resets and begins to operate normally again. Now, your body doesn't know the difference between running from a saber-toothed tiger or rushing your kids to school. Your body's stress response is triggered in both situations, so your blood pressure, heart rate, and food digestion is the same as Grump's when he's running away from a tiger. These types of situations could happen every day in our culture. The difference between you and the caveman is the caveman was able to relax in his cave soon after he finished stressing out. So for the whole day, the caveman would stress the duration of a hunt, which would last maybe an hour. You, on the other hand, have to deal with the stress of racing your kids to school, traffic, work, relationships, and everything else that life constantly throws at you. Plus, add in the constant chemical stress that comes from the unhealthy foods we eat, and it's like you are running from the saber-tooth all day long. The solution is to build your own cave. You have to build your own cave every day, and it means...
So we're going to talk about building our own cave, or another way you could frame it is we're going to talk about how to cage the tiger. Because the tiger, we don't want to carry it around with us everywhere, then we need to learn how to cage it. So that our body isn't consistently going through this fight or flight response, burning out our adrenal glands and causing crazy, ridiculous issues, chemically speaking, with the organs in our body. So to cage the tiger, what we need to address is this thing called the hurry illness. Now the hurry illness is everybody vying for better control of their time, and it elusively slipping through their grips because we don't have a good action plan on how to manage our time. So, time is what we want most, but for a lot of us, it's what we use the worst. It's not enough to be busy, so are the ants. The question is why, what are we being busy about? There's a big difference between being busy and having priority. Would you guys agree with me?
Yes.
Yeah, right? Because I can load up my schedule and I can be busy as all get out, but some of the activities that I have on my schedule might not be priority. And so prioritizing the things that we need to get done and then filling in the gaps is really what it should all be about, ideally speaking. So we're going to talk about time, so I want you guys to just go ahead and take out your time watches right now and set them for 36 hours. We're going to work on it. No, I'm just kidding. So one of my mentors, he told me one of the best things is to not get stuck in this position in the first place where your time all of a sudden is gone and you have this whole list of things you want to work on and dreams you want to accomplish, but you never really got them done. And so the way he explained it to me is relating it back to wrestling. So he was I think he still is, United States Olympic men's wrestling chiropractor. So he would adjust the wrestling team, Dr. Ben Lerner, and he said, in wrestling there's a thing called the cradle paradox. Because the cradle is this move that if you get put into the cradle and it's successfully executed on you, there is no escape. So the only way out is you have to tap out. And he said the cradle paradox is if you don't want to get into a cradle, or you don't want to get stuck in a cradle, don't ever get into one in the first place. No, he said the only way to get out of a cradle is to never get stuck in one in the first place. That was the paradox. I knew I was going to mess that one up. But either way, the cradle paradox is really important because if we start thinking about time that way, time is this asset like money. If you guys have your bank account, we treat our money very differently than how a lot of us treat our time, don't we? Because when our paycheck comes in and we look at our bank account, we know I have X number of dollars. This is a resource. Money is just a resource, right? But of that resource, I know I need to set aside a certain amount for rent. I need to set a certain amount of money aside for food and for my kids and for school or whatever it is that are the priorities. You set the money aside for that first, and then whatever you have left over, you get to decide, well, what do I do with the leftover extras? Does that make sense? But a lot of us aren't doing that with our time. We just wake up and it's whatever the day gives me, great. So we're not using our resources. For a lot of us, when it comes to money and time, this is our preferred approach, right? Run away! Not deal with it, but we're gonna go ahead and deal with some of it today. So what I would like for you guys to do, real simple, your note pages. You should have in your packet a T crossbar, Let me see. Somewhere in there. There it is. Time tracker. So you guys should have the sheet. So I want everybody to whip out the sheet. What are we doing with the sheet? With the sheet, we're going to start writing down all of the activities that we do on a weekly basis. Okay? So in a week, I sleep. Cool. So I'm going to write down sleep. I drive to work. So commute would be another one. What's another one? Let's see. I eat food. Yep. Chiro, so I could say chiropractor or adjusting. I'll just write chiropractor because that's what you guys said. Yep. So prayer.
Exercise.
Yep.
Or physical.
So you guys should be writing all these same ones down for yourself if it applies. Exercise. And so you keep going on down the list. You write those bad boys out. Now the reason why we're doing this is because we really want to start looking at how we've been allocating this resource time. What have we been spending our time doing? Where's the focus of our time been? So I'll give you guys another minute or two to do that. Max, do you want to blast a song or something? Give them some work music? Yeah. There you go. Sleepy music. If you're the coffee, here we go. So we got Disney music.
This is just what I was given.
That's fine, that's fine. Okay. Yeah, so some of the important ones you guys definitely should put on here are television. So you got TV, you've got social media. How much time do you spend on social media? Hopefully your handwriting's better than my chicken scratch. But you're writing out all these things. Cool. Now, as you're writing those out, if you can multitask and you're a smart person, what you want to do, sleeping. How many hours a night on average do you sleep? 12? Dude. You can kill the music. Thanks, Max.
Kill the music?
Yeah. So, if I sleep 6 hours a night, 7 nights a week, how many hours in a week am I sleeping? 6 times 7? Okay. If I drive and it takes me a half hour to drive to work, a half hour to drive home, on average I'm driving an hour a day, 5 days a week, 5 hours a week, right? This is going somewhere, I promise. If I eat, when I eat, I like to eat fast. So I probably don't spend a lot of time actually physically eating. I probably spend more time prepping my food or cooking my food. Like I could eat in 2 minutes. It's probably a bad thing. That's probably why I always have hiccups. So I know that's something I have to work on. So for eat, for me, is going to be a little bit less. Chiropractor, I'm at the office, the clinic, probably 25 hours a week. Prayer, I pray every morning, right? Doesn't have to be long. If it's 30 seconds every morning, maybe that might not add up. But if prayer for me, I can categorize as part of my morning routine, which we'll talk about. My morning routine, ideally, is like 30 minutes every morning. So 30 minutes every morning, 7 days a week. And you start adding these things up. And you guys can keep working on this while I continue talking about different categories of activities here and how we're going to prioritize. And at the bottom, add these all up when you think you've got it and let me know what the total is. Or at least let yourself know what the total is. All these activities that we spend time doing, in psychology, there's a thing called Covey's 4 quadrants. So raise your hand if you read 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. So that book, so Stephen Covey, I think his stuff is in that book. Similar thing to what's right here, but I'm not sure if we included this in your packet or not, the quadrants. I think we did, but if we didn't, you guys are more than welcome to just go ahead and put a big cross on your worksheets. Now keep in mind, some of this stuff you guys are gonna have to finish at home because you're not gonna have enough time to do it this morning. But I'm giving you the tools and the strategies so you can actually execute this. After you write out all those activities that you do, you want to start categorizing them in one of the 4 following categories. So there's this thing in Covey's 4 quadrants where category 1 is important and urgent. So these are the activities that are like pressing deadlines, like a crisis that's going on, emergency room visit, deadline-driven projects, like a lot of things, they're absolutely urgent, they have to get done, it needs to be done right now. So not all the activities that you're writing down on that list are gonna be those types of activities. These are the things that are kind of like symptoms. They're unplanned for, they come up, they just like attack in life, right? And a lot of times they come up because of us not actually effectively executing the category or activities in other categories. Then you've got number 2 right here. Number 2 right here. It's not urgent, but it's certainly important. So what could some activities be that are in here? This is actually one of the most important categories that we invest time into. So these are relationships. So like relationship with my wife, exercise. So it's not urgent, like I don't have to do it today, right now, right while I'm talking to you guys, I don't have to exercise, but it's certainly important, right? What are some other things that would be in that category? So not urgent, important.
Paying your bills,
Okay?
because I mean,
So making sure that your stuff's paid for, absolutely. Exercise for new opportunities, date night, prevention and planning. What about some of the stuff you guys are doing right now? Super important. You need to figure out where am I allocating my time. But it's not urgent, like you don't have to do it right now per se. What you'll find is the more activities that we actually schedule into our lives that fall in this category, ultimately the more satisfaction, happiness, and the greater fulfillment we're gonna end up having in life. Category 3, it's urgent, but it's not important. So these are things that like a lot of work-related stuff. So this is like phone calls, emails, meetings, activities, like popular activities, some social things. For us, they're urgent because maybe we schedule to do a social get-together tonight at 7 o'clock, but really it's not that important at the end of the day, right? So those are activities that would go in here, category 3. Now category 4, this is the category where I'm like, you got your whole schedule, everything's, it's all planned out, what you're doing for your day, the things that you have to get done, and then all of a sudden you decide, I'm gonna polish my shoes, and I'm gonna spend the next hour polishing my shoes. Like, what the heck are you doing, dude? Or like you whip out your phone, and you're on Facebook and Instagram for the next hour and a half. And you're like, what just happened? Like you get stuck into a whole, or Netflix marathon, right? So those are the things that are in category 4, and every single one of us is guilty of spending time there. Cool? So after you write out all your activities and you total up your hours, take those activities and then fill the categories and see where you're spending most of your time. Cool? All right, next step. Well, I already kind of talked about this, so we can skip over that.
Can you go back just 1 second?
Yeah, so back one more, right here. And this is something you can Google Covey's 4 quadrants. Stephen Covey. In this bottom category, these are a lot of the things that, they're urgent, but they're not super important. We spend a lot of time in here because we're spending so much time in here and we're not investing in the things that are gonna provide for us happiness and satisfaction and fulfillment with the relationships and, things that are really, really important but not urgent. What ends up happening is we find ourselves having to deal with putting out all of these fires. So the things that are super urgent and important because they present in the situation because I didn't properly, take care of things ahead of time. Does that make sense? So it's almost like the disease process. Here's the cause, here's the symptoms. The cure is we spend more time over here. Make sense? Cool.
There's a well-known story about a university professor who wanted to make a point about how we make the most of our time. The professor stood before his class with some items in front of him. When the class began, without speaking, he picked up a large empty jar and proceeded to fill it with rocks about 2 inches in diameter. He then asked the students if the jar was full. They agreed that it was full. So the professor then picked up a box of pebbles and poured them into the jar. He shook the jar lightly and watched as the pebbles rolled into the open areas between the rocks. The professor then asked the students again if the jar was full. They chuckled and agreed that it was indeed full this time. The professor picked up a box of sand and poured it into the jar. The sand filled the remaining open areas of the jar. Now, said the professor, I want you to recognize that this jar signifies your life. The rocks are the truly important things, such as family, health, and relationships. If all else was lost and only the rocks remained, your life would still be meaningful. The pebbles are the other things that matter in your life, such as work or school. The sand signifies the remaining small stuff and material possessions. If you were to put sand into the jar first, there is no room for the rocks or the pebbles. The same can be applied to your lives. If you spend all your time and energy on the small stuff, you will never have room for the things that are truly important. Pay attention to the things in life that are critical to your happiness and well-being. Take time to look after your health, play with your children, go for a run, write a letter to your grandmother. There will always be time to go to work, clean the house, or watch TV. Take care of the rocks first. The things that really matter, set your priorities. The rest is just pebbles and sand.
I love that. So the rest is just pebbles and sand, right? So where we spend our time, activities that you guys wrote out, the hours total, shout out some of the totals you guys have. Did anybody actually go all the way through it? 153. Okay, well when you guys get there, if you do the math, there's 24 hours in a day and there's 7 days in a week. So how many hours do we have in a week that are available to us? 168. So what you're going to find is your total is either going to be right at 168, in which case if that's true for you, like you know exactly where you're spending your time. Then my question is, what activities, what quadrants are you spending most of your time in? And then how could you shift that? Number two is you could have hours that add up 151 hours, like you said, but 168 is the total, so you're not accounting for your time somewhere. And if it's small activities that you can't like total to be like hours, you can still write those activities down that you think are the sand, per se. And then still take all of those activities and write them down on the quadrants and see where you're spending most of your time. For some of us, we don't even need to use the quadrants. You can look at this list and be like, I'm spending, for some of us, maybe 60 hours a week sleeping. What? And then you look and you see TV, I'm spending like 25 hours a week watching TV. Then you know where you could really cut and trim some of the fat with how you're spending your time, and then allocate that time to focusing on something that's more important, right? So this really is a big eye-opener for a lot of us. The first time I did this was all the way back in 2009. I was at a Maximized Living, like, camp transformation is what they call it. That's actually where I learned this technique. It's really, really cool. Now, if you add up all your hours and you're higher than 168, you were overbooking yourself, overscheduling yourself, you're committing to too many things, you probably need to go to one of those seminars where instead of yes man, it's the no man seminar. Like learn how to say no to certain things and stop overbooking yourself. Yeah. So 2 action steps with this to create the discipline that we need to live a life of significance. Now that I've got all my activities, I see where I'm spending my time, what we really should do is start thinking about what are my goals? So what are some of the things that I want for my life, right? Because now we know where we're spending our time. Now it might make it a little bit easier for us to figure out how do I allocate my time so that goal becomes true. Fair? And in doing that, when you start scheduling throughout the week, before you can get yourself to actually make a schedule, define your lives is step number 1. Step number 2 is create a war plan. And then step number 3 is paint solid yellow lines around important areas of your life. So, with that being said, what is defining your lives? Well, it's kind of like a cat, or like this guy right here. I'm a chiropractor, I'm a husband, those are 2 different hats. I'm a business owner, that's a 3rd hat. I'm a son to my dad, that's a 4th hat, right? And so like, how many hats do you guys wear? A lot of hats, right? What are the hats that you're proud of wearing and that you do want to wear? Right? Because the reality is, we all have countless amounts of hats that we wear, but what are the ones that you want to wear with pride? Right? Like, what are the ones you want to focus on is what I'm trying to say.
Family hat.
Like, who am I?
Personal hat.
Right? Because you can define still who you are with those hats that you're wearing. You're going to have to wear all the hats, but that's just kind of taking care of business. The hats that I want to wear and who I want to be, I'm going to define. I'm not going to let the world define them for me. Does that make sense? So like I would say family life is one of my hats. It's important to me. I want to spend time with my wife. I want that relationship to cultivate and further develop. I want to grow with her spiritually. Personal health and fitness. Financial life. Purpose and spiritual life. Hobby or recreation life. Social life. Community obligation life, right? I think it's important to give back to people. Education and personal growth life. So define what your lives are. Maybe they're all the same exact lives. I want you guys to pick 8 lives at least. You could pick 9 if you want to be like a cat. You could have 9 lives. But what I want you guys to do is open up your packet, go to the pie chart. You're going to have a pie chart in your packet. And on that pie chart, that's where I want you to write your lives. Can you hold that up real quick? So, pie chart. Cool? Everybody got the pie chart? So on the outside of the pie chart, in these blank little rectangles, you can write your lives. Financial life, social life, spiritual life, so on and so forth. And then what we're going to end up doing is write our lives in each of these little rectangles. And after you get those penned in, what I want you guys to do is grade yourself on how well you feel that you've been executing, performing, successful in that arena of life. So with that hat that you're wearing, if it's my financial life, am I a 1 out of 10 is how well I've been doing because my finances suck right now? Or have I been actually pretty disciplined about it? I know how much money I have, where it goes. Am I an 8 on there? And so what you do is just simply take your pen like this and put a dot right on the number that you're grading yourself. So over here is social life. I am not really a social type of a person. I'm kind of like a hermit, so I go home and like, after I spend my time out in society, like, it's okay, you don't have to call me. I don't need to talk to you on the phone. Like, I don't need to go out to parties. That's cool, I'm cool with that. So for my social life, I'm gonna say it's really good, even though other people on the outside might say my social life isn't the best. But I'm defining my arenas, right? When I get here to spiritual, I think I'm a 9 out of 10 on spiritual, right? Maybe I'll be really honest and I'll say over here, health and fitness, over the past 6 months after injuring my wrist, I haven't been too hot, so I'm gonna put myself as a 5. And then after you put your dots in, it's really simple, connect all the dots. Go through and connect the dots and it's gonna show you where most of that balance has been in the arenas in your life, with how the emphasis has been and how, if you're being honest with yourself, you might need to look at shifting some things to get better in other areas. And that's not working on your weakness, that's working on who you need to become so your dreams can come true. You guys get the difference on that? Okay.
Can you go back to the slide forward? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So all the hats. So that hat up top, that's his family life. His family life probably isn't doing so hot because it's all the way up there. It's not close to him. I actually just made that up. Cool. Anybody have any questions on that? Because what we're going to go into next, I feel like, is super powerful. If something I have said already hasn't been powerful for you, then hopefully what's coming up next will be. All right. So again, after you do that, you're going to connect the dots. Cool. And then you're going to see some of us are going to be like, whoop, all the way over to the side. And then like over here is all suffering. For some of us, it'll be pretty balanced right now. Great. Now we're going to shift gears and we're going to say, what are the goals that you're working on that you want to set? So I know how I'm spending my time. I know where the focus is. I know where my focus needs to shift towards, right? So now I've got all these goals. Stop calling them New Year's resolutions. What are your goals? What are the dreams? What are the things you want to see happen? Those goals, when you're setting those goals, a lot of us just set a goal and then we don't put a time limit on it, right? And so if I set a goal and then I don't put a time limit on it, it just ends up being a dream. For most of us, it never happens because I didn't say it needs to happen by this date. So this is an example of how we start setting SMART goals. So SMART goals is an acronym that stands for S, specific. I want to make sure that the goal that I'm setting is pretty clear. I want to avoid putting unclear language in writing out my goal. I want to be very specific about that goal, right? So you were specific with that goal. You said, I want to read 1 book a week for the next year. It's specific. I know how many books. But if I said I want to read more books, that's not specific. So who is involved? What do I want to accomplish? Where will it get done? Why am I doing this? And again, you can, for the why, do that 7 drill, 7 whys. Which constraints or requirements should I have? So that's our S. Our M, I didn't provide this for you guys in the packet, sorry about that. You can type in SMART goals in Google and pull up a whole thing. There's like 7 different versions of this. But M is measurable. Can I measure the progress? Well, if you're specific with the goal, usually you can measure the progress, right? So reading 1 book a week, 2 weeks into the year, if I only read 1 book, I can measure how well I'm doing. I'm 50% off, right? Because I should have read 2 books and I'm only successfully read 1 and 2 weeks have passed. Good goal. So can you track the progress and measure the outcome? How much? How many? How will I know when my goal is accomplished? Cool. A is attainable. So is it achievable? Is it attainable? Is it a realistic goal? Some of us set goals that are like crazy, not realistic. And then we beat ourselves up for it, and then we don't give ourselves grace, and then that ends up carrying with us to the next goal we set, and we have shame about it. You don't want that. So we want realistic, achievable
Can I say
goals.
something
Yeah.
about that too? But also at the same time, I think that goes back to the fear of what you could, because what if Thomas Edison and the Wright brothers and people like that thought they could only do something that's attainable and achievable? Sometimes we don't realize what we could do, so we are under.
Right. So what she's speaking to is, instead of us reaching for the moon or reaching for the stars and falling short and hitting the moon, some of us set our expectation too low and we hit the mark. So I totally agree with you on that. Is like, instead of thinking small, whatever your goal is, sometimes we need to actually expand the possibility of that and believe enough that we can double that, or we can triple it, or we can 10x it. And there's nothing wrong with setting goals that are like that. So my rule for that is usually a stretch goal, real goal. And when I'm looking at it, I'm really thinking about every time I refocus on that goal, what's the stretch goal? So like, I might have a stretch goal for losing 25 pounds, and then I have, my regular goal is actually lose 20 pounds. But the stretch goal is, like, you can even play mental games with this. With the stretch goal, if my stretch goal is to lose 25 pounds and then actually hit it, then you can schedule to celebrate in some very specific way. And reward yourself for that. It's great to play mental games like that. Maybe take a trip to Greece or something, right? But awesome point. R is relevant, so is the goal worthwhile and will it meet your needs? So is this relevant to who I am? Does this work with my belief system? Does this fit into my paradigm? You don't want to set goals that will probably have like nothing to do with like who you are. And some of us are encouraged to do that because we're influenced by somebody else. But again, is it who you are? So is it relevant to you? Timely. This is one of the most important ones that gets missed. If you don't set a date on it, and be very specific with the date. Like, I will lose 25 pounds through burst training exercise done 3 days a week by, and then put the actual date by October 1st, 2018. Cool? All right, so we've talked about setting SMART goals. The next thing I want to shift towards is how do we actually schedule these things and put them down in our calendar. And so what this is called a war plan. So war plan, it's named a war plan because time, just like money, is one of those things that if we don't manage our time and decide where we want to spend our time, it's like our money, it ends up just disappearing, right? It gets taken away from us. There's John 10:10 says there's an enemy, right? The thief cometh not before to steal and to kill and to destroy. But I am come that you might have life and have it more than abundantly. So there's an enemy out there that's always working to screw us over on our time. And if we don't steward our time, like we steward our finances, then we end up losing out on that time. And so there's a rule called the rule of school versus the rule of farm. And I talk about this a lot, and we covered it in our team huddles multiple times, but the rule of school is tomorrow, what's today, Saturday? Monday morning I have an exam, and it's a big exam. It's like a semester exam, and I have to perform well in that exam or I fail the class. So the rule of school says I can account for lost time in school, and I can cram study, and put all these other things aside and just focus on studying, right? And then all of a sudden I can do well enough on the test that I pass. The rule of farm is Monday, my crops are due. Now, I didn't do my due diligence to plant the seeds, to water the crops, to give them the nutrients they need, right? So can I make up for lost time? No. Because what it really requires is the discipline of managing my time earlier on so that the crop yield can actually be a fruitful yield. Make sense? So, with that, one of the most successful ways of doing it, what I've experienced just through personal experience and in the past, and then working with mentors of mine, is this thing called war planning. So if you guys haven't ever heard of war plan, it's a war plan because every morning, my day, I'm going to battle with the devil. And when I wake up and my feet touch the ground, I want Satan to be like, holy crap, David's up. You know what I mean? So our war plan is what's going to help us successfully do that. So what I did is I provided an example for you guys in your packets of what a sample war plan could look like. Now with the war plan, it's essentially taking your schedule and then scheduling in the activities that are going to be in that category 2 of the code-based quadrants, that they're not urgent, but they're super important. And it's talking about scheduling your rocks in first. And so it's accounting for your time. That's really all it is. And it's a loose schedule. You don't have to like pull your hair out over trying to stick to this. But step number 1 is you just got to get it on paper. So print out a blank schedule. Oh wait, I already printed one out for you guys on another page. Look at that. So with your schedule, what you want to do is you can either do this by 15-minute segments, half-hour segments, 45-minute segments, or hour segments. Most people, it's best to start with hour segments and just hold yourself accountable for what are you doing for those hours, right? And schedule it in, because if you don't schedule it, it doesn't happen, right? So put your rocks in first. Here's an example. Monday, 5 a.m. from 5 to 6, cardio, meditate, Bible, read the Bible, read green books, maybe get into an attitude of gratitude, do a morning routine. Look at my vision board, right? Well, Dr. Dave, I don't have a vision board. Maybe you should schedule to make one happen. Yeah? No, but seriously, put the rocks in first, and then fill your schedule with the things that you really care about, the things you want to get done. Maybe you're trying to write a book. Maybe you're trying to build a brand new app from the ground up. Maybe you haven't been to date night with your wife in forever, and you need to get that scheduled. So these are all things I'm personally speaking of. So I know what I'm going to be doing tomorrow. Sunday is a good practice to schedule your week out. Cool? So then put your rocks in first. After you get your rocks in, look at that, brunch date with wife. Then you put the pebbles in second. So those are the activities that you have to do. That's like, I have to go to work. I have to pick up my kids from school, like those types of things. You schedule those in, and then after you get all those things in your schedule, you're gonna see you have little chunks here. And guys, I want you to understand it is totally cool. In fact, I encourage scheduling yourself rest time. Schedule yourself social media time. Schedule yourself just like, this is when I'm checking all my emails. And you're way more intentional about it. You can actually enjoy doing things that you don't have to feel guilty about. There's nothing wrong with doing them. You just don't want to aimlessly do them, and then it takes up all your time. Cool? So after that, if we go all the way back, we said step number 1 was define your life. Step number 2 was put it into a war plan. Step number 3 is this concept of solid yellow lines. So I need to spray paint solid yellow lines around the rocks in my life. Or you could say I would spray paint solid yellow lines not just around the rocks, but around arenas of my life. So around the hats that I'm wearing. Solid yellow lines when I'm driving on the road. If there's 2 yellow lines, what am I not allowed to do? Cross over. So I trust that I'm not going to cross over those lines and collide into the person that's in the other lane, but what's the other person going to also do? Yeah, so they're safety precautions, right? So they keep their boundaries that keep us safe. We stay in our lane. So when it comes to solid yellow lines in your war plan, or just generally speaking, if I'm here at the office, I'm typically not checking my cell phone, and if I am, I'm off purpose. You know what I mean? It's not like it's okay to pick it up and maybe check, just like did my wife text me or something like that. But I don't want to be like sitting here at work, scrolling through social media and Facebook and being highly ineffective with where I am and what I should be focusing on, right? Or like if I'm at date night with my wife, I don't want to be thinking about work emails. Because then what does the quality time with my wife look like if I'm sidetracked, listening to a conversation, but then also checking emails? So these are examples of how I would paint solid yellow lines and say, no, this is my family time, focusing on family. Cool. And then it allows us to execute effectively in different arenas when we're spending the time on it. The easiest way I've had this explained to me is, imagine you have a big desk surface, and on that desk surface you've got 8 different projects that you're working on. And so I lay out project 1, project 2, project 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and they're all across the table, and I just like hover and brood over the table, and I'm like, I'm gonna work on this. Wait, there's a question over here. I'm working on this. And you try and work on all 8 things at once. How effective are you? But what if I took all those 8 projects, stacked them in one pile, and then took binoculars and just focused on the one and spent 20 minutes of concentrated time on that one project? And then when the 20 minutes of time was up and my work plan says, no, moving on to the next thing, I go, oh, okay, cool. I set those boundaries ahead of time so I know I just get it done. Move on to the next project, even not finished with that first project. And then I asked my mentor long time ago, like, just an example, Dr. Ben Lerner, right? Wrote all these books, New York Times best-selling author, like 2 or 3 different books, has family with like 3 kids, owns like this huge freaking house down in Florida, and opened like 8 different clinics, and then ran Maximized Living with like 65 employees. And I'm like, what? How did you do all that? Right? Because I own like 1 clinic and I'm a chiropractor and I'm married and I don't have kids. Like, how did you get all that done? He was like, solid yellow lines. When I wrote my book, I spent 15 minutes a night writing my book. And for those 15 minutes, I focused on exactly where I was, the now, and I set all the other distractions aside. And consistently working on my book 15 minutes a night for 5 days a week is better than working on my book 1 night for 3 concentrated hours. Well, he's got it down. So this is an example of solid yellow lines. If it's in my schedule, you know, when I'm doing it, when the time, I just realized the sequence of that is off, but you get where I'm going with this. That's all I'm focusing on because that's what's in my schedule. And the rest is painted out. So use the binoculars and just set the focus and the intention. After you've framed your week, do the best you can to follow it. And remember, nobody's perfect. You're not going to be able to execute it flawlessly and seamlessly, but in time, you're going to get better and better and better at it. So give yourself grace when you stumble. God knows. You need to give yourself grace too. So this is just an example of some of the focus times again. So like the arenas of my life, where am I spending like my solid yellow lines? That's just extra information. It's not necessarily pertinent. You guys got the principle already.
Can I take a picture?
Yeah.
Nope. Wait. Sorry. Thanks.
Cool. Very good. I think I missed part of it though. So we're going to shift gears to talking about supplements right now. So what are some things we can do that might help us out with this whole goal setting process?
Adaptogens are like a thermostat. Thermostats respond to the temperature of the room and bring it down if the temperature is too high. If the temperature is too low, it will bring the temperature back up again. Adaptogens work the same way. They can calm you down or pick you back up again, whatever your body needs to deal more effectively with the stressors of life and the environment it finds itself in. Adaptogens help support proper adrenal function. They are excellent for counteracting the adverse effects of stress. In fact, adaptogenic herbs enable the cells of your body to access more energy, eliminate toxins, and utilize oxygen more efficiently. In short, adaptogens are an essential part of a happy and healthy life.
So that's my good colleague there, Dr. Pete Sulak in Knoxville. He's a huge proponent of adaptogens. So adaptogens, like he was saying, are a great support for your body when your body goes through the normal stress response. So let's be real about it. As good as I am with my schedule, as good as I am at managing time and solid yellow lines and prioritizing, I'm still going to deal with stress. I mean, our body goes through chemical, physical, emotional stressors literally all day long. And so a great supplement to help your body with that stress response is cordyceps. So cordyceps is a mushroom. It's a tall, skinny mushroom that's jam-packed full of really good adaptogens that help your body streamline the stress response and get back to balance faster, right? So it's got really potent anti-inflammatory, helps lower your cholesterol, stabilizes your blood sugar, improves learning, memory, reaction time. This is just one of many adaptogens that we actually have here in the clinic. So your happy area is right here, that red line. So this red line, you guys think about that red line as like homeostasis, balance. So even if you get stressed, your body goes through that fight or flight response, whole chemical reaction, releases cortisol, hormone changes, so you can run from the tiger, right? But then after you run from the tiger and you get to rest, right? Here's running from the tiger, you get to rest, it comes back to balance. The problem is before you actually fully rest and come back to balance, what else comes along? The tiger again, another stressor. So here comes another stressor and it throws me out of balance again. And so over a long enough period of time, eventually what happens is our body's stress response, every time we're exposed to stress, it becomes more and more difficult for our body to get back to homeostasis. Every time we get thrown off, it gets just a little bit bigger. So the adaptogens, think about it as being like a buffer. So I come in and I buffer the total throw off of where the stressors take me, and I help to narrow the effects of stress and get my body back to homeostasis faster. Cool?
So how many of those a day?
Probably about 2 a day is what I would start with. And you can do those first thing in the morning.
Is it safe for children?
Yes, it's perfectly safe for children. And then the second thing is going to be vitamin D3. If you guys aren't taking vitamin D3, raise your hand if you're a D3 fan. No? Go Ducks? No, I'm just kidding. Totally just kidding. I don't even know if ducks are D3, but vitamin D3, your body actually makes its own D3. Does anybody know how your body makes vitamin D3? What does it need to make D3? Sunshine, right? Now, I can go out and I can suntan my arm and I can make vitamin D3, right, Dr. Duke? No, you have to get it on your core. So it has to be on your core, I believe, for a good 45 minutes a day. And between, here in Tennessee, it depends on like how the angle of the sun, the UV rays, but it's between like 10 a.m. and 1:30 p.m. So I don't know about you guys, but I'm not walking around with my shirt off for 45 minutes a day, every day, between 10 a.m. and 1:30 p.m. So in order for my body to get an adequate amount of vitamin D3, the next best thing is to supplement it. D3 is just an active form of vitamin D. But again, the only way your body gets that active form is either through supplementing it or making it on its own because you were exposed to sun. D3 is not just a vitamin. Your body actually utilizes D3 like a hormone. It's really, really important for activating T lymphocytes and killing cancer. It's actually a necessary thing. Your body needs D3 to activate the T lymphocytes to actually go involve and kill cancer cells. So it's really, really important. There's a lot of studies that have actually been done. Women with breast cancer having significantly lower levels of D3 in women without breast cancer. Interesting. And then the next guy right here, this is another adaptogen.
How many vitamin D?
Great question. 5,000 IUs a day. But if you go and get your blood tested somewhere, we could send out for that here actually. You want more than 63 nanograms per picometer, I believe. So like your blood levels, you want higher than 63. And if you were to look at the recommended levels are like all the way down at like 35 or 40. Yeah, like the normal recommended levels. What I say your recommended levels need to be is significantly higher. Because if you look at where a lot of chronic disease lives, it's when people's D3 levels are still within the recommended normal. But when you get high enough D3, your chances of chronic disease significantly increases. But 5,000 IUs a day. Chaga is the other one. This is another mushroom. So this mushroom on the ORIC scale, and the ORIC scale measures how powerful of an antioxidant this is. Chaga is right up there with turmeric, with curcumin, essentially the orange coloring that's in turmeric. But it's one of the most potent antioxidants on the face of God's green earth. So because of its high antioxidant yield, it fights aging and inflammation. It's also antiviral in effect, and it helps to soothe the stress response, provide overall balance and homeostasis. So for some of us, we're like, I don't know which of these mushrooms you want me to take, Dr. Dave. You can get all of the 5 mushrooms, I'm not going through all 5, in a multi-mushroom capsule that we have back there. And so that way you're kind of getting the benefits of all of them. But one of my favorite ones is lion's mane. So we don't have the lion's mane here right now. I think we're actually out of stock, but lion's mane is like my favorite, absolute favorite one because of how it's essentially like legal Adderall. That's the easiest way I can explain it. It really helps with good mental acuity, focus, and just like delivering on all cylinders. So I kind of got our team addicted to it, maybe a little bit. So I am guilty of that, but that's probably why we have none left, because we all take it for ourselves. But we'll get you guys more if you want some.
Does Dr. Axe have it?
Yeah, it's a Dr. Axe product, so it's one of the ones that we have up top there. So this thing right here, gas, just to refresh your memory, I kind of breezed over it, is the whole stress response. So the stress response in the human body is pretty detrimental and causes our body to respond in a negative way. One of the most effective, I shouldn't say effective, one of the most detrimental ways that stress affects our body is how it affects our spinal cord. You shouldn't be yawning. I was just staring at you yawning.
I'm looking at which
You
one
get
was
tired.
symptoms.
So, most important organ in our body, I'm going over this because you guys, I know you're all patients, but it's so good to reinforce principle, to remind us of why are we doing what we're doing, and how is it actually beneficial and effective to us. So God put 80 to 120 years of life in our brain, and that life is what animates every single cell of your body. Think about this for a second. Your skin, when you cut your skin, how long does it take for your skin to heal? Anybody? 3 weeks, 2 weeks, cut goes away, your body heals it up, scabs over, grows new skin from underneath. Those cells replace all the damaged cells, and it's like, ooh, I got brand new skin. How'd that happen? It's pretty cool. There's an inborn, innate intelligence that's in your body that coordinates that healing process. That intelligence starts in our brain, comes down our brain, and flows through our body, primarily through the nervous system. Pretty awesome. So we grow a completely new set of skin in 3 weeks. All of the skin cells in your skin are completely replaced with new cells. So like you get new skin every 3 weeks. How cool is that?
Very cool.
Right? In fact, your whole skeletal system, all the bones in your body, every cell in your bone skeletal system is completely replaced every year. So every year you get a brand new skeleton. How awesome is that?
Yeah, awesome.
Right? So when you start thinking about it from that viewpoint, whereas I've come to give you life and to give you life more than abundantly, our life is already abundant whether you see it as a reality right now or not. The truth is, that might be, your truth might not line up with this right now. When you start shifting your paradigm, it will. The truth is that your body is abundant. Right? Because 78 trillion cells that make up David, and of these 78 trillion cells, literally millions upon millions of cells since I've been talking to you guys for the past 48 minutes or whatever it's been, have been completely replaced in my body. That is abundance. It's just new cell, new cell, new cells, new cells, new cells, new cells. Isn't it, like, how cool would that be if my bank account was just like, new dollar, new dollar, new dollar, new dollar, right? Or like time. Oh, you get another hour, another hour, another hour. That'd be awesome if you were on vacation. But the reality is the truth is that your body is abundant. God created and designed our bodies to thrive from the inside out through our nervous system. But even without talking about the nervous system, just generally speaking, our body operates from the principle of abundance. So the whole reason why we're going through working on us and working on our spines is because we understand the principle that life starts in our brain, comes down our spinal cord, out these nerves to animate beating my heart in my chest, to make my lungs breathe so I can love someone, wiggle my fingers, go to sleep last night, not think about the fact that I'm sleeping, like all these processes to take place. It's cool, the coordination and harmony of it. It's all coming from my brain. So if I came along and we took the nerves that were going to my heart and I cut those nerves in half with scissors, bad news bears, I know that my heart stops, right? That sucks. Now, if instead of cutting the nerve, we know that if we were to apply pressure and pinch that same nerve going to my heart, instead of getting healthier, over time would start getting sicker. And as my heart gets sicker, begins to malfunction, that's when we develop disease. It malfunctions. My heart can't beat at its full God-given potential. And then my heart's a muscle and it has to beat harder. What's that do to my heart? It could raise my blood pressure. But your heart, because it's a muscle, when you work out a muscle consistently, what happens to the muscle? Right? So if my heart, the ventricles, the bottom chambers of my heart continue overpumping and then they get thicker and thicker and thicker, eventually it leads to congestive heart failure. My heart shuts down. It can't beat effectively. The muscles have overgrown. It's cardiac hypertrophy. So it's just an example, though, of how damage on a nerve could affect that organ. So we know the principle of damage on our nervous system. What it always comes back down to is what's protecting it. The bones in our spine, are they sitting in the right position protecting our nerves, or are they sitting in the wrong position damaging the nerves? So here's an example of a woman who came in who, in the middle part of her neck, because she had lost the proper curve that she should have, it was putting a tension on and stretching the spinal cord in her neck. And as a result of that, most of the damage was right here in the middle on the nerves that are coming out, going to her thyroid. And so she'd been taking thyroid medication for 3 years before she saw us. And we started working with her. And the cool thing is, as we went through the process of correcting her spine, we started to restore proper structure in there, got the curve back to where it should be sitting, and her body healed. We didn't have to do it. We just removed the interference, and then God did the healing. So that's why it's so powerful that we're consistently reminded of why are we getting adjusted. Remember, the why behind the what is so, so important. I want to get healthy this year. Well, why do you want to get healthy? Because I want to spend more time with my wife. Well, why do you want to spend more time with your wife? Because we want to start a family. Well, why do you want to start a family? So the world that we're working to mold, forge, and create right now, I can see my child grow up in that healthier world. You know what I mean? So at the end of the day, it's all about what's inside. We take x-rays to see bones, but it's all about what's inside the bone. This white thing right here is the spinal cord, and you'll see that right here, where it starts reverse curving in the neck, it actually starts to compress the spinal cord. So that's why we're doing the adjustments. So this isn't really necessary because you guys all here are already patients. But if you have any friends and family that need to have their spine evaluated and haven't ever had it done before, you guys got to get them scheduled for an appointment. If it's here, great. If it's in another clinic, awesome. Just get them to a chiropractor. At least a principal chiropractor. And if you guys haven't done so already, go to our Facebook page and like us. And then this is actually our old website. So our website since then looks a whole lot different. It's way more schmack, just gotta say. Now, February 7th, our next event that we have coming up, it is a Wednesday evening at 7 p.m. Misty right here is actually going to be teaching a biblical essential oils class that we're gonna have right here. So it's Wednesday evening, February 7th, and we'll have an Eventbrite registration available for it. that you will see on our Facebook page. I'm really excited about it because I don't know about you guys, I actually want to come learn about biblical essential oils. I have one guess, frankincense might be involved somehow?
Yes.
Okay. But we're really excited about that because we're partnering with Misty and she's an ace in doTERRA essential oil world. And so she's decided to go full on with that as the business model that you're going to be using to build business and to get doTERRA essential oils into more people's hands because of the amazing benefits